We are live, so I'm just checking if the streaming is coming on Facebook. Yeah, we are live. Okay. So I hope all people are joining in. Welcome, everyone. A very good evening to all the boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very interesting Facebook live chat with very incredible teenagers, 4 of them here. The topic of discussion today is a very relevant and important one, managing stress the teenagers' way. And considering the depressing news we have been hearing over the last few weeks, I think this is all the more important, this topic. So joining us today for the live chat are 4 budding teenagers who have also been 1M1B future leaders and have showcased their incredible work at the United Nations in New York in 2018 and 2019. So welcome Aryani, Tanvi, Pranay, and Ishita. To begin with, why don't each of you introduce yourselves to dear viewers? We can begin with Aryani. You want to go first? Okay, go ahead.
Hi
Please.
everyone, my name is Arani Sahai. I'm 16 years old and I'm a grade 10 student at the International School of Bangalore. This year, I'll be going to 11th grade and so far in high school, I have maintained a grade point average of 4 out of 4. Regarding my extracurriculars, I am a yoga trainer, so I'm a certified yoga teacher. That's something I'm really passionate about. I love organic cooking. I'm a public speaker. I have spoken at the Women's Economic Forum at IIM Kozhikode, where I received the Young Leaders Creating a Better World for All award. I'm also a writer. I write my own poetry, and currently I'm working on an ebook that will be released in July. My 1M1B Future Leaders project is called Let's Talk, and it aims to spread mental health awareness among adolescents as well as break the stigma around reaching out for help. As of today, with the help of our 80 volunteers, we have conducted 102 awareness sessions and impacted 3,000 students. I think mental health is a very important topic, especially right now, and I'm excited to share my insights with all of you.
Well, welcome, Arini. That's a very impressive bio. You've just shared. Very happy to have you on the chat. So next, why don't you go ahead?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ishta Sharma, and I'm 16 years old, currently studying in 11th grade in NPS International School, Singapore. I've been in my school basketball team for the past 8 years, and I'm currently the school house vice captain. I've also taken part in multiple debate competitions, taking first place in that. And I also love to play the piano. And I've also been a student choreographer in my school for the last 3 years. I was one of the main panelists for speakers who got selected to speak at the UN through the 1M1B platform. And I spoke in the panel for reducing inequalities. My project was called Together for Inclusion, which aims to bring special need or differently abled children and regular school children closer together, making them put aside any possible differences or misconceptions people have regarding them. I've also held many volunteer sessions in special schools and organizations in Singapore and many interactive art and craft sessions through which the different age group kids could connect with the volunteers and bring them closer to each other. I've also organized few advocacy sessions with my school friends, around a group of 40 of them, to clear any misconceptions and stigmas around the topic of special needs children. My project as a whole was aimed to connect regular children with those of special needs and create a bond of understanding and compassion between them. My project was not limited to just these children and also included talks with caregivers as a medium of support and understanding to help them understand that they're never alone. So I've impacted around 150 people with my project, and I definitely am looking forward for this amazing topic for discussion today. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Ishita, and welcome to this Facebook live chat. That's a very impressive, impact you've created through your project. Next, Pranay, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Pranay Satya. I'm 18 years old, and this fall I will be attending the California Institute of Technology to study bioengineering. So a little bit of background about me. I went to an IIT training academy in 11th and 12th. But I was also really passionate about medical science and research in general. So I spent a lot of my free time in university labs and government labs like the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology and the IIIT Hyderabad Bioinformatics Lab. I spent a lot of time working with grad students on multiple projects involving both biophysics and cancer drug discovery. So that was a lot of fun for me. On the side, I'm also a really avid MUN participant and debater. I was the youngest executive board member at the international MUN held at IIT Mumbai for 2 years in a row. On the side, I am also an aspiring medical student. So I did spend a lot of high school shadowing in hospitals and clinics, which was a really nice experience to both see medicine and just people from all different kinds of backgrounds and societies. Last year, my Future Leaders project aimed to provide an affordable source of clean water to villages in Andhra Pradesh. So certain villages near in Bhimavaram and the surrounding areas had a contaminated groundwater, and because of the low-income status of many residents, they had large problems purchasing water from private retailers. So my project aimed to set up a sustainable business that was run by the community for the community to provide clean water to everyone. So far, we've impacted over 500 families, and we've managed to bring the cost down significantly to make it more affordable. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me, and I'm super excited for our talk today.
Well, thank you for that intro, Pranay, and welcome to the Facebook chat again. Tanvi, finally, if you can introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Tanvi Mankar and I'm 14 and I study in National Public School Rajaji Nagar, and I'm a dancer and I love attending events. And my project is about spreading awareness and providing alternatives to people about digital addiction. And I have also tried to solve this problem from policy, and I've got Mr. Tejasvi Surya, who's a member of parliament, to help support my project.
Okay. Thank you, Tanvi, and welcome to the Facebook live chat as well. Um, okay. All right. So let's get started, straight into the session and the chat, what everyone's been waiting for. Um, First things first, being a teenager today is not easy. You deal with more time management issues than most adults. School, extracurricular activities, sports, music, friends, social media, and what not to be done in 24 hours, right? In fact, we had asked a question on our Instagram story today if teens find it harder than adults to manage time. And guess what? 96% of them said yes. So my first question to, in fact, all four of you is this: how do you manage time? Maybe two of you can share, how you manage time, and two of you can share what your daily schedule looks like, right from school till the time you go to bed. So probably, Arjun, if you want to begin, you can start off, share with us what's your daily typical day look like.
So usually when I come back from school, I take the bus, and on the bus, I try and just listen to music. Or if I have a test the next day, then I'll study a bit. Once I come home, I make it a point to spend at least 30 to 45 minutes eating and winding down, just taking some time for myself. Then I spend 3 to 4 hours just studying because my curriculum is really rigorous and we have very frequent tests. After that, if I have an hour left, then I will just spend it on my extracurricular activities. So usually that involves doing something for Let's Talk, like coordinating a session with the teachers in my school. Then I'll eat my dinner and try and sleep so that I get at least 7 hours of sleep each night. I do think that my schedule is pretty busy. And what I do is that every break that I have, so if I have breaks in school or in the morning when I go to school in the bus, I have time, I take that time and I try and do something for myself. So in the morning, I listen to music, and in school, instead of going and studying or talking to teachers about a test, I will try and spend as much time as I can with my friends. And I think that really helps me um, manage this busy schedule and just deal with how rigorous things are.
Okay, okay, yeah, that's a really really busy day. I was just wondering, when you're gonna stop the number of things you have to do in a day. Ishita, how about you? How is it for you?
Yeah, so for me, I think the most interesting thing about the question you asked today was how I plan my day. And I think it's very important to know how you plan your day and you plan in advance, because being a teenager in these present times is definitely not easy. There are constant pressures from your parents, from families, and also you have expectations from yourself which you have to meet. So that's definitely a huge thing. So I think the most important thing for planning my day is being better in the time that's given to me. So what I do is one night before the for the next day, I take a piece of paper in my notebook and I note down what I'm going to do the next day. It's sort of like my time management technique in which I note down my priorities I have for the next day. For example, if I have any homework things to do, or if I have any school projects or essays, or if I have any other quick tasks I need to do, such as checking my emails for school events that are going to follow, or even something like improvising my notes, which I may have missed. So all of these things, I note them down in order from the first priority to the least priority. And I try to make sure I allocate the right time for each of them. For example, the major tasks which are due in a while, I have to ensure that they're done first, followed by the quick tasks such as probably copying my notes or maybe checking my emails. So what this does basically, it just keeps me mentally prepared for the next day. So I know how my next day will look like and helps me plan ahead. So this way it reduces my chances of wasting my time when I get back home, which is usually the highest tendency we have after such a tough day in school. So it just keeps me ahead of my time and helps me take some time. And I, of course, plan to take some time out for relaxation towards the end when I'm done with my priorities.
Okay, wow. I mean, being very organized in terms of writing it down, what do you do throughout the day, that really helps. Prioritizing really helps. Thanks for sharing that, Ishita. Over to you, Tanvi. Tell us about how do you manage your day and what's your daily schedule look like.
So I usually wake up early in the morning and I go to school and I come back. My school gets over at 3 o'clock and it's like a half an hour, 45 minutes ride from my school to home. So I reach home, I eat something quickly because right after that I have my tuition and I sit in tuition for like 2.5 hours. And right after tuition, I come and I just have a half an hour gap between my tuition because after half an hour I have another tuition. And usually to just to relax my mind and get my and not feel stressed, I speak to my friends who I meet, and we speak for some time. I play around and then I again go back and sit in tuition. And by 9 o'clock I'm done with all my tuitions, and then I have to sit for my external studies, which I don't do in tuition. And after that, again eating dinner, and then I stay up till probably 12 o'clock having dinner. And not dinner, studying and finishing my notes, homework, and everything. And then I probably sleep at 12:31, and again get up at 6.
Okay, again, that's a very fast schedule. Staying till 12 at night and again waking up at 6. I mean, like one of the comments that just came in, that's pretty much like a CEO schedule. Thanks, Tanvi, for sharing your schedule and how you manage it. Pranay, over to you.
So you were asking me sort of how I plan out my day and things like that. So I'll probably first admit that I'm really bad when it comes to long-term planning. In that I really cannot dedicate myself to stuff that's very far in the future. So what I found really works for me is to sort of break my day down into 45-minute to an hour chunks and sort of have a side-by-side list of priorities as I go through it. I do ensure to put time for ample breaks because I am prone to burning out every so often. So as I'm planning out my priorities and the tasks that I have to finish, definitely taking a 15-minute break every hour or so is close to the top of that list. In terms of other time management tips and practices that I use, I generally have someone to keep me accountable. So I usually send my schedule over to either one of my parents or one of my friends who sort of checks in on me every so often to make sure I'm not just blowing off time and just procrastinating forever. So using those two techniques is sort of how I keep myself on track and just plan out my entire day.
Okay, yeah, very, very impressive, how you plan out your day. Um, away from the time management stress. Yeah. So Arini, I'll come to you first. Your project Let's Talk helps teenagers with mental health, right? So can you tell us more about this project Let's Talk and a couple of interesting stories that you've come across while you're implementing this project?
So, Project Let's Talk spreads mental health awareness by conducting awareness sessions in both rural and urban areas. We mainly target government schools because there's like a severe lack of awareness there. They don't even know what basic terms are. So, we do this through our curriculum. Our curriculum can be divided into two parts. So, the first part is the basics. So, what is mental health? What is vulnerability? What does it mean to reach out, and why do we stop ourselves? We talk about toxic masculinity, as well as why people have a tendency to take more care of their physical health and kind of neglect their mental health. And then once the students have like a good base understanding, then we go into the clinical side of things with a counselor. So, what are the different symptoms of mental illnesses, how to identify it, and as well as what to do if you think that you or someone you know is exhibiting these symptoms. We try and keep the sessions as interactive as possible. So we have like, I think 30 minutes of just reflection exercises. And we make sure that the students really take what we're saying and apply it to themselves and really look at their attitudes towards mental health and their own mental health. So this way we try and have a very comprehensive curriculum. One experience that I'd like to share was the first session that I ever did. So I was really underprepared, and in the car, I was like sweating. I felt like throwing up, and I thought that once I spoke to the kids, they would just like reject me and say that I didn't know what I was saying. And so it was hard initially, but then when I actually went and I saw everyone, I decided that I would ditch the script that I had prepared and I would just speak from my heart as a teenager, as someone who has gone through the things that they are going through. And I think I just spoke about my experiences with every topic that came up. And at the end of the session, I think like 15 to 20 students came up to me and we just started talking about everything and our experiences. And the kids told me that, like, really, it's okay to cry. And that's a topic we discussed in the session. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, wait, what? And they were so puzzled, but it was exciting to them. And just seeing, like, there's a long way to go, but just seeing that I started that conversation and that Let's Talk was able to do that, that really stuck with me. And that kind of motivates me every day to work on Let's Talk and try and make an impact. Another experience that really stuck with me was in another government school a few weeks later. So we asked the kids, how many of you have parents who tell you that being a topper and excelling academically is your priority? And I think a majority of them raised their hands. And then we asked the kids, how many of you are told that your happiness is a priority? And I think like one or two people raised their hands. And that really solidified a lot for me because that's something that me and my friends go through in our school. So it's the same situation. And I think it showed me that, you know, the struggles that teenagers face, irrespective of their socioeconomic background, is the same. We're kind of put in an environment where we're told that we have to excel academically, and a lot of our other needs are neglected. So I think just you know, going through that experience, it was really meaningful, and I learned a lot.
Great, great. Thanks for sharing that, Ari. In fact, great work done by you through project, Let's Talk. And I've been following some of your work on Instagram and how you have been helping out teenagers. Great. Thanks for sharing that. Over to Pranay. Pranay, first of all, congrats on your admission to Caltech. I know that's not
Thank
easy.
you.
Now, again, my question to you is related to that. You spent a couple of years preparing for this admission, right? Going to coaching classes. Now, of course, there would have been a lot of pressure from parents, of course, relatives, the society, friends, peers, teachers, everyone. How did you manage with this immense amount of stress? And my second question, adding to this, is if at all you hadn't gotten to Caltech or any of these, top universities that was on your list, would it have affected you, and how you would have dealt with it? Because I think this is a very relevant one, considering many of the teenagers are applying for some big universities, right?
Yeah. So for sure, sir, college admissions were probably one of the most stressful things I've gone through. I definitely am glad that's over. But to answer your question, there is an immense amount of stress, both from your parents, your teachers, your friends, and I think just the whole sort of subjectivity of the entire process is something that really gets to everyone. Whether you're applying in India, so I went to an IIT academy, and the competition is immense. I think you have 12 million kids writing an exam for 10,000 IIT seats. And over in the US, your application is read by somebody who's never seen you, who will never meet you, who will never talk to you, and they're trying to judge you in 10 minutes. So the entire subjectivity of that entire system is incredibly stressful. One thing I would say is I dealt with the pressure by sort of having a dedicated support group, and as I said, these were sort of my friends and parents. I was incredibly lucky to have some very understanding people. As I was opening up my admissions, my father actually said, Pranay, it's prestige. The prestige of your university is neither necessary nor sufficient for your success later on in life. You're just merely entering a new stage. And that sort of helped me realize that whatever happens once I open up my decision and whether or not I'm accepted or rejected, I'm just starting a completely new journey. It's not the end of anything, rather, it's the beginning of something a little more complicated. So, just having a very dedicated support group in my parents and friends was something that really helped me get through it. And to answer your question, what would have what would I have done had I not been accepted? I think part of the entire process is to sort of have safety options or backup options, whether it's in India and you're writing the mains or the NEET, or whether it's in the US and you're applying to slightly less competitive colleges. Knowing that you have a good backup and it's something that you're happy with really helped take off the stress a little bit. And as I said before, just realizing that this was, not the end of anything. I mean, after your bachelor's degree, you still have masters and you still have your job and you still have so many other things that you need to do. Just realizing that this was not the end game was something that really helped me move forward.
Wow, that's very insightful, in fact, Pranay, and I really applaud you the way you've handled this with so much maturity. Love the quote that your father shared with you, and in fact, always having a backup plan, that's important. That's very true. So I was just looking at our Instagram story that we had, and the question was, what stresses teenagers more today? And the options were academic expectations and social media. And guess what? 85% have actually said academic expectation is what stresses them the most. So my next question is basically related to pressure, right? Now, this is for all four panelists. Now, from the short introduction that all four of you gave, you seem to be really high achievers in your own right. Now, and you know that being a high achiever is not easy. It brings with it a lot of pressure, pressure of expectations, pressure to perform, pressure to be on the top. My question is, how do you manage to deal with this kind of pressure and stress? Maybe we could start with Ishita.
Yes, so definitely managing stress at this point is a very essential thing. As I'm entering 11th grade, I just have a year left, about to choose my uni after that. And my aim is actually to pursue medicine and the field of medicine. And I've realized that managing responsibility is one of the most key requirements of getting into medicine. If you even want to become a good, successful surgeon, you of course need to manage your time and manage responsibilities. So dealing with pressure is something I've started working on from now. And there are many ways to deal with pressure at this age. And I think one of the main things we need to all understand to deal with pressure is that sometimes it's not just the effort we put in that talks about the pressure that's built up, but I think the idea that just trying to understand and calm yourself down and accepting that yes, I am pressurized at this point, talking to someone about it really makes a huge difference. And I think the main cause of pressure, academic pressure, is also the competition and peer pressure that you see along with your friends and even your best friends. Sometimes you see those type of pressures building up. So one of the main things you can do is probably to understand your competition is with yourself, because you might be the best in the school, you might put in your best effort and be the best in the school, but there's always going to be someone out there in this world that's going to be better than you. So I think the main way of focusing and reducing pressure is on focusing on yourself and setting your own goals, which you improve on eventually by yourself. Because if you're content with yourself and how you perform, then it's better instead of just focusing on peer pressure all around you. And also, always talking to your parents, because they'll be there no matter what, is a great sign, along with like minded friends who probably will always be there and support you. And maybe talking to them, you just clear yourself and you just relax yourself, which really helps and which is really beneficial. That's what I do.
Well said, Ishita. And in fact, a great way of handling it. There's always going to be somebody better than you, right? We have 7 billion plus people in this on this planet, and you can't expect to be the best. So very well said, and I like how you're handling this. Yeah, Tanvi, how about you? How do you handle with all this kind of pressure?
I completely agree. I think in this competitive world, I think most teenagers go through a lot of pressure. And I personally think that being organized and having a schedule and sticking to it really helps. I also think that I completely agree with Ishita. I think comparing yourself to others also brings a lot of pressure. Not everyone's perfect, right? So maybe you're good in something and and not good at something, and maybe your other friend is good at the thing that you're not good to hear, not good at. So I think that also brings a lot of pressure. So stop comparing yourself to others, and again, being organized, and yeah, just practicing self love and not being too hard on yourself really helps cope with the pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, self-love and not being too hard on yourself. Another point, resonating with Ishita again. Yeah, true. I agree to both of you. In fact, Ishita and Tanvi. Pranay, how about you?
So as you said, so there's a lot of pressure out there in academic spheres, and it is incredibly uncomfortable at times. But what I do think is important is that sometimes being uncomfortable is sort of necessary. Whether it's been in school or whether it's just been in the 1M1B program itself, I think being uncomfortable or out of your comfort zone at the end of the day is essentially what helps you be better, anyways. As for dealing with sort of the pressure of competition or the pressure of having to learn, huge amounts of information and apply it, I think what's really helped me is just being incredibly methodical and strict about your own study habits and your own work ethic. If one thing that I have learned is it's not so much that mental ability only gets you so far. A lot of us are smart. A lot of my friends are smart, but I think that the main difference between those my peers who have done well and those who haven't done so well is mainly the amount, not even the amount of work, it's the type of work that they put in. So one thing that really helps me deal with the pressure is just having a rock solid plan for how I'm executing different tasks. So just sort of planning ahead in small increments is something that's been very important to me for just dealing with huge amounts of work. Alternatively, I think, as I said before, just having a group of friends who are going through the same thing as you is very important, because it's important to bounce ideas off of each other, see what tips are working for others and what aren't. And finally, I would say talk to a lot of people who've been in the same position as you, and recently too. Maybe not your parents. While their advice is always invaluable, sometimes it's not the most applicable. So I've made it a habit to specifically go talk to upperclassmen or seniors in my school who have gone through the same exact track as me, and their advice, in retrospect, has been really helpful. So those are some of the things I use to deal with pressure.
Well, a number of great points, in fact, Pranay, and you seem to be someone with a plan always, very methodical, chalking out your day with a plan. This is what I need to do. And I think, yeah, that kind of helps, it takes the anxiety out of you, you know what you need to do. Yeah, well said. Arini, let's hear from you. How do you deal with pressure?
So I've actually had a very personal and trying relationship with pressure. I think for me there was pressure from a lot of sides. So my school put a lot of pressure on me, my friends, I think everywhere, but the person who put the most pressure on me was myself. A year ago, I was in a very bad place with all of this. I had like this unhealthy obsession with being at the top. And if my marks slipped even a little bit, or something went wrong, or someone beat me, I would come home, I would break down, I would punish myself. I would tell myself really toxic things like, now you'll never be successful, or they were right about you, or you're a failure, just from like the slightest mistake. And I think that I use three main strategies to overcome this. So, firstly, I redefined what success meant to me. A lot of people tell you that success means getting recognition. And for me, when I was growing up, I was told that once I became a topper, and once I was the best, I would get happiness, but that didn't happen. And so I was really confused. And I really took time to think about how my perception of success was based off other people's. So I sat down and I wrote down what success meant to Arini. And I realized that success means being healthy, success means being happy, and success means having good relationships. And that's what it meant to me. So I think just redefining that really helped. Secondly, and this is something you see in a lot of achievers and overachievers, I looked at the relationship between achievement and self-esteem. So for me, my self-esteem kind of fluctuated with my achievement. So when I was doing well in school, I would be on this high, and it would be very temporary, but it would be there. And then suddenly when things went wrong, things that were out of my control, anything, it would just drop. So it was always like this. And I realized that what I had to do was kind of ground my self-esteem in something more healthy. So I grounded it in my values, I grounded it in how I interacted with people, my kindness, just things I liked about myself, apart from achievements. And I think once I did that, I came to really like love myself, and I had a much better relationship with achievement. Thirdly, I think that in my school and in a lot of schools where you have a very competitive environment, it's easy for you to kind of like be envious of people around you who are doing well. And I was kind of told from people around me that if you are successful, then people will be envious of you. So I that led to a lot of loneliness. And what I did to combat that was I talked to a loved one, and they said that you have to lead with what's important to you and lead with what really defines you. And so now when I approach people, I lead with um, like my values and what I love and who I am. And I think that really helps. And now I have a great group of people around me who love me for me and not my achievements. So I have overall a much better relationship with success. And I think I recommend all teenagers to kind of self reflect how they're dealing with pressure in different ways.
Right. I mean, three brilliant points shared, Arini. I'm sure if it works for you, others can also try it out, right? It's no harm in trying, and that can really help. Okay, I've got a lot of comments coming in, a couple of interesting questions. So let's pick a couple of them before we go on to our next questions. A question for you, Tanvi. It's you talked about self-love and taking care of yourself. So how do you take care of yourself and practice self-love?
How do I take care of myself and practice self love? I think the main reason, I think what I describe as self love is one of the main things that how I started was not comparing myself to other people. And social media is a major place where you compare yourself to other people. So I think I started distancing myself from social media. And I started telling myself that I started, instead of looking at the negative things about myself and my personality, I started looking at things that I like about myself. And I remember doing this one thing where there was this one day I was feeling just very insecure, and I spoke to my friends and I just asked them to name things that they really like about me and why they are my friends or what do I mean to them. And I got really good comments, and I think that really boosted me up that day because that was a really good day for me. So I think just you don't need anyone to tell you that you're amazing, but I think at times reassurance is really helpful.
Right. Yeah, I think sometimes you talk to your friends, right? And indulging in what you like, maybe sometimes, right? Maybe just listening to some music, or maybe just having that extra chocolate, right? That kind of helps. Thanks for answering that. I mean, next one is for you, Pranay. You're the one with the plan, right? So, so the question for you is, how do you know that the plan is rock solid? And adding to that, another question is, Kanika says, no matter how many schedules I make, I tend to not follow it. Any advice on how can I always keep on track and creating the schedule?
So I'll actually admit, I was terrible in making plans in the beginning. I used to plan out way too far in the future, or just have unrealistic goals where I would try to cram in more hours of work than there were in a day. And it got to the point where all of my plans were just sheets in a notebook and nothing more. Over time, I've sort of tuned and adjusted myself to realizing where my work limits are. And I think one example I can give of that is my whole situation with all-nighters. So I used to have this grand idea where if I can't get work done during the day, I would just slog through the night and hopefully get it done. And at some point, I realized after midnight, my productivity just hits a cliff and I go down. So it's actually better to take a break, just get some sleep for a bit, and sort of rework your plan from there. And to sort of answer Kanika, plans can always be malleable. Plans don't have to be set in stone, or they don't always have to be permanent. If you're looking for ways to ensure that you stick to them, um, one thing I would do is, again, tell a friend, have your friend check in with you every hour or so. So my friends and I just have this massive WhatsApp group where, while we're studying, we'll send texts to each other every 2 hours or so, just to make sure we're on track. And what we also do is we have a penalty system. So whoever's caught slacking off, or whoever's caught online when they're not supposed to be, usually pays for movie tickets the next time we go out, which is a true story. I've lost way too much money doing that, but it really does help you sort of keep your head straight, and keep yourself focused. So sort of have a sort of reward and penalty system, by
Yeah,
incorporating
well,
that into
well,
your plan. I think that's how it
yeah,
works.
I think brilliant answer, Pranay. And I love this method. Penalty and reward system. That's true. I mean, if you're going away from your plan, it's good to have somebody look over you and make you pay for it, right? Kanika and the others who have had the similar question. Now you know what you need to do. Um, in fact, Pranay, last answer this to me. In a very short, quick answer, right? So the question, this is in fact from Manav. Manav has a question for you. Is what is your plan B and plan C if Caltech had not happened?
So plan B was to go to UC Berkeley, which thankfully I did get into. And plan C would have been to stay in India. I was going to write the Indian entrances for BITS and some local colleges, and maybe try to go to the US for my masters. All sorts of different ideas. In the US, I also did apply to a couple of other less competitive schools, like some of the other universities of California and things like that. So just having some backups that I compared against my stats and profiles just helped me get a realistic idea of where I had a good chance of getting in.
Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah, it still seems like you definitely had a plan B and plan C. Okay, so before we take some more questions, all the viewers, you can definitely share your questions in the comments. We'll try to answer as many as possible. Again, depending on the time, we'll try to end it within 1 hour. So coming over to you, Tanvi. Tanvi, you are a master of digital de-addiction or digital detox, right? So through your project, and I know that social media plays a huge role on teen mental health. And in fact, again, a question we asked as a poll on Insta story, and 63% of them said that social media does put extra pressure on them. Be it wanting to look good, going on those fancy vacations and clicking those Insta worthy pictures, the number of followers and likes. How much does all of this affect one mentally, and how do you deal with this?
I think social media plays an extremely important role in the mental health, especially of teenagers. I think I was also a part of it. So when I had recently joined Instagram, and I was following these celebrities and people, and I used to see that they're always in US, and they used to post all the good things about this country. So I always assumed that the United States was an amazing place. It was literally the best country, and that's why I used to keep asking my mom to take me there. And last year I did go there. And when I went there, it was one of my biggest dreams. And when I finally got to live it, all I was worried about was sharing it on social media and showing people that I was actually having fun and that I'm somewhere where you're not. So, it kind of made me a different person, but I also forgot to live in the moment. And it was mainly about, okay, let me take a picture of this, let me take a picture of this. And when I came back, I remember talking to my dad, and he asked me to tell me about how he felt about it, and he's like, maybe write down something or something like that. And I hardly could remember anything. I was like, I'll show you this picture, I'll show you this picture, because more than remembering, it was all in more of a digital format. And that's when I realized it was a wake up call for me. And when my parents spoke to me, I'm like, oh shit, I'm like, this is a problem. I'm so addicted to social media, and I want to share my life so much with people that I'm not able to focus on what I wanted to do for so long. Because I could hardly remember anything about the US trip. And that's when I realized, and especially after that, I decided to do this project. And when I did this project, and when I wrote one of my blogs, and obviously I circulated with everyone, including the people who I met with US. And I remember one person commenting on that, saying that he was on the trip with me, and he he had never seen me without the phone, and now he's so proud of me because of the fact that I'm talking against the use of phone. And then that's when I realized that, oh, okay, so the people noticed, and people noticed the fact that I wasn't really enjoying myself over there. And yeah, so I think many people like this forget to live in the moment, and it's like it's the pressure that social media puts on you, right? And when I went to US, first I thought that, oh, it's such an amazing place, but when I went there is when I realized that, oh, people don't share the reality, you know. People share the good side of everything, and they don't share the reality. Because US was not everything I dreamt it would be. I thought it was this perfect country, and it had its own flaws. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I definitely relate to that, and at the same time, I think many of us would agree to the same, right? We are always, whenever we are traveling, we are always trying to take that Insta or the picture so that everyone else is envious of it and they want to go there. And like you said, some of the places, it just looks better on Instagram than it actually is, right? The whole country might be something, but you find that nice cozy spot and click a picture, and suddenly everyone wants to go there. Like you said, on Instagram or social media for that matter, things are not exactly as they seem to be. So it's all about living in the moment, and very valuable point shared, Tanvi. uh, Ishita, my question for you, because you live in Singapore, right? So which is, a when you look at it, a near perfect city from the outside, and of course with that comes the pressure of portraying perfection in terms of physical appearance or social status, etc., to fit in with the crowd there, with your global set of friends there, right? So have you ever felt the pressure to look a certain way, display a certain type of behavior, etc., and how did you manage this, and how has it helped in your development?
Yeah, so definitely, as you said, sir, living in Singapore, where grades and sports really matter, they're really highly regarded, and they bring a lot of expectations from you, from your teachers, from your families. But most importantly, it brings a lot of expectations for yourself. You really want to stand out and do your best. So even I find myself trying to do even better, spending longer hours studying and reaching a level of perfection which I always aim to. So I have this personal anecdote which probably would explain this situation a bit better. So I was very young when I moved to Singapore. I was about 2 or 3 years old, and I tried to fit in with the crowd when I just reached here. As in, when I came here, the only language I knew was Hindi, and everyone around me was speaking in English, and it was so fluent, but it was such a new language to me that I was like, I would never fit in this crowd. I don't think I'll ever get in, or I'll ever have such people to talk to me. So I went up to my mom and I told her that I don't understand what they're saying. I feel very left out. So definitely she said that, yeah, in a while you'll also learn this and you'll fit in. But after a few years, I realized that it took a while, and now I realize that all of these things don't really matter. Always us trying to fit in with the crowd due to peer pressure, or trying to reach a high social status, or trying to reach high expectations because of mainly peer pressure, it becomes a very difficult task. So, how I deal with this type of competition till date today is that I try to understand, take a step back from such materialistic expectations and behaviors that people expect of from you, and I just see what really matters to me. So I think it's just good to take a step back and think what is something that truly matters to you, and how does it define me. So I realized that none of these wearing expensive clothes or putting on excessive makeup helps me improve my image about myself. Maybe from the exterior, I may seem to be super cool, fitting in with the crowd. But in the end, I realized that at this age, I think I finally understood that it's not your appearance which matters. Rather, it's your own the way you are from the inside, how your personality is, how empathetic you are, and this is one very important skill I actually learned from my own project. Talking to special needs children and talking to them and having such sessions really told me that none of the volunteers tried to show off. All of them were just trying to fit in. And in the end, the only thing that connected us all together was not our appearances. It was in the end how empathetically and how passionately we talked to each other and bonded. So that was one of the greatest learnings I've had till. So another important thing I've learned is that one of the most important quotes you must have all heard is beauty is skin deep. And I go by that. I always will, because it truly matters a lot that beauty is just superficial, but it's definitely not something which will take you all the way around in your society. Having a good heart and genuinely staying grounded and knowing your roots is what will bring you out through, no matter where you live in the world. It's about how strong and how mentally, how well you handle all of these in total. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that answer. In fact, Ishita, and pretty sure you have, in fact, adjusted really well to Singapore now that you're there so many years, and perfect reply there. In fact, one of the questions was on peer pressure. And I think you have answered that. It's all about being with your friends and being in that moment and understanding what you want, right? It's not about comparing. Of course, like you initially said, there's always someone better, but it's about being yourself and putting the best and doing the best you can be, and understanding that internally rather than portraying it and trying to look good. So well said. I know, very good answer there. um, let's look at a couple of questions now. Let's see, let me check. um, quick question for you, Ishita, is would you do your higher education in Singapore, US, or India, or somewhere else?
Okay, so I definitely don't have any restrictions as to where I want to study. All I know is that I want to pursue medicine, and I know that India is equally good as Singapore and US and UK, as a matter of fact. So I have all my options open till now, but I'm probably leaning more towards where I am currently, Singapore or probably UK. So because US has additional years for studies, and India has, as Pranay talked about, the NEET, which will be a really different thing for me to at this point. So yeah.
Okay. This is another question any of you can answer. Do you believe looking at long-term visions are healthier or scarier than short-term goals? Long-term visions or short-term goals? Which one is healthier and which is scarier? Who wants to take a stab? Pranay, you want to?
Let's see. So short term goal versus long term vision. I think it's probably a good idea to have a healthy mix of both, which I know isn't exactly the greatest answer to that question. But in my experience, long term vision is usually influenced by what we are thinking in the present, and it's usually subject to a lot of change. I have changed my mind so many times about what I want to do in life in terms of a career, what I want to pursue, what I believe, who the people I admire. So long-term visions are good, but you have to sort of realize they're grounded in what you believe right now. So focus on your short-term goals, but have some sort of idea on what you want to end up, and and things will usually work themselves out. I think. Don't
Yeah,
quote me on
yeah.
that, but I think that's how I would lean.
Yeah, things will work out. Just having those short-term goals, working on them with the larger long-term vision, I guess. Yeah, again, well said. You guys seem to have all the perfect answers for all the questions that come in. In fact, Rashmika had a similar question, and I think Ishita has answered. She tries to focus on herself, but at the back of my mind, keep comparing myself with others. What do you suggest to reduce this? I think Ishita, you just addressed that, along with peer pressure. Um, Question to Ishita from Hugo. What is your take on the situation pertaining trying to fit in a society which disregards you because you're different? What would one do to become accepted by the society?
Okay, so that's a really great question. Thank you for that. So, definitely, as I said, living in Singapore has, at the start, it was a very different experience for me because none of my relatives as such lived in Singapore. So, when we moved here for the first time, everything we did was brand new for us. So, I understand that fitting in may be difficult, but people usually don't try to exclude you from the society unless you don't show the right treatment to them. And I feel that what I've done to feel accepted or fit in the society is, as I mainly said, that just portray your true emotions, just talk the way you actually are instead of trying to fake your accent or fake fitting in, wearing fancy clothes to merge in with your friends. I think just honestly, just staying grounded and talking what you really know would show you that you have a great personality. People will realize that you're not just a person for your looks, but you're also a person who has great substance to speak or something to rely on. So that's one important thing to remember, that you know what you're saying and you have faith in yourself. So as long as you believe in yourself and whatever you know, that whatever you're saying matters, it shouldn't really matter that society will not try to push you out for that. That's for sure. So I don't think there's much about differences because Singapore being a very multiracial country, it allows people to try to integrate as much as possible, and it really helps because everyone is actually one. No one really excludes people. Similarly, as my project said, Together for Inclusion, it's a project where everyone's the same. The appearances or the way they are, or a bit of the differences they may have, we should just put them aside and accept them wholeheartedly. So I think that's one important thing to
Yeah,
realize.
well said, Ishita. In fact, I hope Hugo, you got your answer. It's to simplify it. Honesty is the best policy. Be true to yourself, and Be yourself, simple as that, and people eventually start loving you for who you are. Okay, so continuing with the chat, this is for both of you, Arini and Tanvi. Um, it's a shocking statistic that India is the suicide capital of the world. And just the other day, I was checking this new news article while researching for this talk, and I came across this uh, very shocking statistic, right? So, which is that one student commits suicide every hour in India. And over the last 5 years, when you look at it, I think about 40,000 students have committed suicide in India alone. Now, Aryani and Tanvi, to all the parents and adults watching this live, what do you have to tell them in terms of supporting teenagers and dealing with teen mental health? What would your biggest suggestion or ask from parents and adults be? Tanvi, you can go ahead first.
Okay. So I'd say try to try to make an environment where your child feels safe enough to come and talk to you about it, and try to make the child feel welcome. And again, I think one of the main reasons why kids don't speak up about this is because of the stigma, right? And because of the stigma, they're like they don't feel comfortable talking about this to anyone, and because of that they keep bottling up their emotions, and at one point it's just a breaking point, and that's when many teenagers end up suiciding, as you just said. So create a safe environment, make sure that you keep searching for signs, like don't overthink the signs but also don't underthink the signs. I think if your child's giving us signs, tell them that it's okay to reach out for help. So yeah, I think that's what I say.
Okay, thanks, Tanvi. Um, yeah, Arini, what's your thought on this? What would you ask, tell parents and adults?
So, what I've seen with Let's Talk in talking to teenagers, I think that before I had this misconception that it was just teenagers who just didn't want to reach out at all. So I would often find myself saying things like, please reach out, or reaching out is really important, which is all valid and true. But I think while teenagers should know that there's people they can talk to, we need to work to create an environment where they're listened to. So, to the parents listening to this, I would say that really understand and learn how to listen to your child. With me and my parents, when I was going through a lot and I asked them and I reached out to them, what I found was that instead of, I just wanted to be listened to and understood, but they were so, and this came from a place of love, but they wanted to fix the problem. So they just like told me like a quick fix, and I didn't really feel like I had the space to talk about what I was going through. And there's lots of ways that parents can educate themselves on this. There's workshops, there's books, there's online content. So really just make an effort to listen with the intent to understand and not to reply or find a solution that quickly. And once you start having a conversation about something, I think then you guys can come to a solution that both of you agree to. Yeah, and I just think that also mental health should not be a conversation that occurs when something bad happens. Make mental health an everyday conversation. And you can do this just by asking, how is your mental health today? And your child doesn't have to answer, but then they know that there's someone who cares. And just by having just asking that one question every day, I think that will create a relationship of openness and trust. So these are some of the tips that I have for all parents listening.
In fact, great tips from both of you. In fact, Tanvi and Aryani especially, having that conversation. And thanks for sharing that personal story about how you and your parents dealt with it, right? So I think it's a great example of how do you actually handle it. And of course, teenage being, this is the time period when you have your own personality coming out and you're seen as a rebel. But it's important that you consider your, talking with the parents, and parents also are empathetic towards your change. Well said. This is again a question at the same time, something I wanted to ask you guys as well. So all four of you would have felt anxiety at certain times. You would have had days when you are feeling depressed and not good about yourself. When you felt that this is not my day, I just don't want to get out of bed. So what helps you cope on these days, right? So what's your cheat code to handle these bad days? So I would direct this probably to Pranay and then Ishita.
So what's my cheat code on days when it's just not going my way? I'd say just taking some time off to recharge is probably one of the most important things that I do. And that's usually manifested in a couple of different ways over the last couple of years. My go-to solution is this 400 track long playlist that I have on my phone, just full of absolutely any type of music I like, and I'll just queue it up for a couple of minutes or half an hour sometimes, and just chill around, just not think about anything, just unclutter my mind. If I have a little bit more time, what I'll do is I'll actually turn off my phone and my laptop and just mindlessly play video games for a bit. And if that's not an option either, usually I'll just sleep for a bit. These aren't the most curative solutions. They're not actually solving a problem or solving your problem. But what I have found is that just de-stressing my mind, or not de-stressing my mind, sort of rewiring, just taking some time to unclutter and just sort of give things or stop thinking about things for some time is really what motivates me to restart again. So that's my go-to.
Yeah, well, I love that point where turn off all devices and just go play some games or listen to music. I mean, everyone has their own way. I think the important point here is that just taking a step back, stopping everything else and thinking it's okay. Today is not going to be the day I'm going to work hard. I'm going to take a step back, day for some self love, some indulgence. I think that works. Yeah, Ishita, what about you? What's your cheat code for dealing with stress?
Yeah, so Pranay's ideas were definitely really good. What the main thing I think about is the reason why you're faced with anxiety is because that you're stressed about some problem that's there or arrive, maybe a short term or long term problem. So the main idea, just as Pranay said, is to take your mind off it, to remove anything that's causing the anxiety. So I have many different things I do that when I feel that I'm in self doubt or if I'm feeling very anxious, I usually take some time out and just listen to music because that really helps calm your mind. Just switch off your phone or probably just listen to music and stay away from social media really helps to curb down the anxiety problems. Along with that, I enjoy reading books. So take like reading a book kind of takes me away from the real world and take me into that small safe shell of mine. So it really takes me away from the reasons that are causing the anxiety, and that helps. Along with that, I think having talking to your friends and your families, because your friends may be going through similar anxiety attacks, probably you can say just before a paper or a day or two before your papers, they'll probably be the best ones to guide you because they do care about you, and they'll definitely that's a method that works for me. Along with that, the most important thing that we probably hear every day in our lives is exercising, because it's scientifically proven itself that if you exercise frequently, it releases feel good hormones such as endorphins, which really boost up your mood. And I think that really works for me. Going on cycling breaks, at least for not if you can for 2 hours, but if you can probably for 45 minutes itself, it's really a stress buster. It helps a lot. And I think along with that, since I've been playing basketball for almost 8 years, that's one thing that also proves beneficial for me to take my mind off anything that's causing the anxiety. So I think taking breaks and taking a breather day. So just like, for example, if you have a lot of priorities up your sleeve for that day, just try to cut them down a bit. Just focus on the main two, maybe the homework part or something that you have to, something you can get done quickly, and take a breather day just to relax and calm yourself. Once in maybe 2 weeks, it usually proves beneficial.
Yeah, some really, great tips from there, Ishita, on how you deal with, and of course, 89% of the people who have, said on our Insta poll that they have these days when they don't know what to do, they are completely stressed and anxious. So I think these points will really help them. Let's take a couple of questions now. This is for Tanvi. Tanvi, you got attention on your project at a very young age, very early age, and you spoke at the UN, a lot of things achieved. How do you handle this? Does this create any extra pressure when you're back in school now?
It does create a lot of extra pressure. So when I got this headbook when I was 13, right? So when I got it, I think it was mainly me putting more pressure on myself. So I remember the day before I spoke to Tejasvi Surya, I was so hard on myself. I was like, I'm just a child. What if he doesn't take me seriously? Or what if I mess up? Or I was being more hard on myself than other people. I think other people still understood. And when I did the interview and when I spoke to other people, in my head was a constant thing saying that okay, they won't take you seriously because you're just a child, or you're just a normal, you're just in middle school and you're trying to do something. And I think that was me being conscious about myself. In school, I think my school's been really supportive about my work. Of course, I missed out on a lot of studies, and then suddenly coping up with that brought in a lot of pressure because I missed tests and I missed a lot of notes, and teachers kept pressurizing me because my exams were coming close. But other than that, I don't really think I deal with a lot of pressure. My parents are very supportive. I go to a tuition where I pretty much finish all my studies. So yeah.
Yeah, so having a very supportive
Yeah.
system, right? With parents, school, everyone supporting you, that really helps handle the pressure. Yeah. Um, there's a question for you, Aryani. How do you handle being in a very competitive school where everyone wants an Ivy League admission? How do you deal with the pressure there?
So I think that there is a lot of pressure, and the Ivy League brand is very attractive. I think, like personally, even I have obsessed, and I wanted to go to an Ivy League so badly a year ago. And now, what I really did to really think about what type of university do I want to go and how do I want to shape the few years I have left of high school was to just bring some perspective in. So then I asked myself, like, what does it mean to me to go to an Ivy League or some really great school? And I think that I found that my answers were kind of superficial, that it was the branding. And it was just how everyone around me seemed to think that if you get into an Ivy League university, your life is set, and that's something that I used to think as well. But just realizing that the college you go to is not an end result. Like, it doesn't mean that you have like finally succeeded. There's so much more in college, after college. So I think just keeping in mind that yes, you know, going to a good university is important, but I think what's really important is finding a university that's a good fit for you. So even when people around you are telling you that you need to go to an Ivy League or a really, high ranked university, understanding that sometimes that type of university may not be what's right for you, and you really need to think about where you will thrive. I think that's something that everyone who goes to a competitive should understand. Great
Yeah,
question, by the
yeah, great answer. In fact, understanding it's not about the Ivy League's university, but it's about where would you fit in best, right? Yeah, well said. And one more question. Anyone who can answer this? How do you all? Okay, as teenagers, many fall prey to comparing themselves to those around them, which often results in toxic self-hate. How do you all of you suggest overcoming self-hate? Who would want to answer that? Um, Ishita, you want to try?
Yeah, so I think self-hate, realizing where self-hate comes from is the most important thing, that it comes from deep within you. And something that triggers self-hate is probably the negative comments from people around you. So I think just trying to forget people and their opinions around you, because in the end, it does not really matter. If people have the opinions on you, some might say you're amazing, some might say you're not good for this, some may say you're not suitable for something. But in the end, does that really matter? And the more they start filling you with negative comments, you start experiencing more and more self hate, thinking you're not capable of doing something that you are, probably better than other people. So I think the most important thing for overcoming self hate is to exclude yourself from people who might, bring such negativity or trigger such things in you. And also just to really break free and not focus on things that may trigger self hate. For example, maybe if you didn't perform well in a paper and you're really demotivated for the next coming few days, so just taking your mind off that, realizing where you go wrong, and then improvising on that, not taking the negative part of it, and also just exercising, because honestly, exercising just breaks away the flow that you have of just focusing on something that's going on. So if you're on self hate, self hate, self hate for a while, and you really need a break, you really need to go exercise. Exercise probably change your opinion by the time you come home with a breather and a fresh day ahead for the next day. So I think most importantly is just to understand that okay, at this point I may be experiencing self-hate and it's not very good for me. So I need to do something to take my mind off that. And honestly, people's opinions should not matter. So that's the main takeaway.
Okay, yeah, well said. I'm just looking at the time, and it's 1 hour past 1 hour. So We'll quickly wind up, and my final question to all four of you, to all the teenagers and peers watching you live on this Facebook live chat, what's your message to them? How should teenagers deal with stress and pressure? Irrespective of how the environment is, how the support system is, how can they deal with this? What are probably all four of you can answer and give your tips on this. Pranay, would you want to start?
Sure, sir. So I think the most important thing to deal with in dealing with pressure is to first have a little bit of gratitude. I think all of our situations may look bad, may sound bad, may be bad, but I think it is important at the end of the day to be thankful for what you do have and what you're not struggling for. In terms of dealing with pressure, coping with pressure, I think all of us need to sort of realize that um, you are at the end of the day responsible for your life. And what I'm trying to say is that um, systems don't change, but you do. So you have to realize that today might not be going so great, but there's always tomorrow. Very few things in life are the end of any sort of process. You might not do that well in school, but you have college. After college, you have years and years of jobs. So no milestone really is ever the end. And I think it's important to never stop trying. It's also okay to expect surprises. Just on a bit of a personal side, Caltech was something I really never thought I would go to. It wasn't something I particularly wanted, but I was really pleasantly surprised when I got it. So just look for the small surprises, be thankful for what you have, be grateful for the small, nice things, and just keep working through it. Have a good support group. Friends last forever. Try to make friends that last forever. And yeah, just keep working through it. That's all I can really say. Be persistent, be grateful, be thankful. Yeah.
Well said, Pranay. Great. Be persistent, be grateful, be thankful. Well said. Tanvi, what would you like to share?
I'd say to all the teenagers, I think most teenagers have a tendency to bottle up their emotions because, again, it's difficult for them to speak up. I'd say find a way to vent out your emotions, if not to somebody else, maybe make a journal or just write it down so that you get that out of your head, and try to again listen to music. Try to find a therapy that works for you, and again, as Pranay said, try to appreciate the small things in life. If you're going to be negative all the time and going to keep being hard on yourself, it's not going to help you. So try to appreciate small things in life. Don't bottle up your emotions. Have a good support system. Try to surround yourself with positive people and people who support you, whatever you do, and talk to your friends.
Surround yourself with people who support you. Well said, Tanvi. Aryan,
So, I think the first tip that I have is practicing gratitude. This is something that I was really skeptical about, and I just thought it's something that people said, but I didn't really believe it. But it's really honestly changed my life, and I have a naturally like more positive outlook now. And I think it's really important in a time where teenagers are going through so many changes and everything can seem really negative. So it's really simple. Like you can just wake up in the morning and write three things you're grateful for, and before you go to bed you write three things that you're grateful for that happened in that day. And it honestly, like, I do this every day. It takes literally no time, but it has such a big impact. Secondly, and this is probably the most important tip that I could give, um, choose yourself every day. Choose your happiness before anything else. So like for example, if I look at my schedule and there's like tons of things for me to do, but I know that it's not good for my mental health, I know I'm going to, then even if some of my work might suffer, I make sure that I don't have everything packed, and I make sure I take time. And I think when you say you choose yourself, it's not something that happens in a day. It's consciously choices that you make every day that has a massive impact. And I think that's the difference between you surviving and you thriving. So yeah.
wow. I mean, that's a brilliant answer. Choose yourself every day. Who wouldn't want to do that? I mean, brilliant. Thanks so much for sharing that, Aryan. Finally, over to you, Ishita.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Irene. Practicing gratitude is the most important thing. And at this point, because of social media and because of all the pressures we feel around us, I think the most important thing is understanding and accepting and being positive with whatever we have. Because as Pranay said, the rat race will never end. This is never ending. You just go from school to high school to uni to a job. It's always going to be there. The rat race, the pressure for performing well, it's always going to be there. And I feel that many things that could contribute to such pressure and deal with stress would be the reasons such as staying up all night or staying up long nights just to browse through social media accounts and look at your friends. And usually at night people start going through social media, keep getting into deep places. Oh, my friends are having fun, they're doing even better there. So I think just realizing that, I think sleeping on time and staying away from looking at social media right before you sleep could really have a positive impact on you. And that really helps you realize what you're grateful for. Because looking at other people and on social media only makes your morale come down. So focusing on yourself and focusing on your own achievements and how you've been at the end of the day is probably one of the best solutions I have. And along with that, I think picking up a hobby could really be beneficial. For example, if you play the piano or if you paint, these kind of things really help because they take your mind away from the stressful life you are dealing with and probably put your mind into something that's more constructive. And I think I would just like to leave you all with a question, like, would you prefer that you have high grades, or would you prefer that over your own physical and mental well-being? That's something to really think about.
Um, Hi. Okay, so I just got muted. Thanks for sharing that, Ishita. In fact, a very interesting question you left us with. On that note, I think it's time to wind up. You all have been amazing. And just looking at the comments pouring in, I think everyone just loved this chat because it's been very insightful. And you've all answered these questions in a very matured way, the way you've handled it. And thank you to all our viewers. We have, I think, at the end of this, only I'll know how many viewers were there. I'm sure there were about 250 plus viewers. And thank you for tuning in. You've been an amazing audience. Thanks for all the questions asked. I hope everyone who's watching this chat has helped you. Mental health is important, not just for teenagers, even for adults. It's important that you talk about it, break the stigma around this. Have a good support system, practice gratitude, choose yourself every day. It's simple as that. And whenever you need help, reach out for help. Uh, if, there's always somebody who's there who can help you out. So thank you so much. And that's how you heard it from four incredible teenagers on how they handle stress and pressure. So until the next time, we have some more interesting Facebook live chats coming up. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.